Today we have an extraordinary comedian slash author slash writer, amazing person, and I am just so excited to introduce him to you because he is a phenomenon. Please help me welcome Darryl Littleton Sr.
Yeah.
Hey, Darryl, how are
you?
you?
Lydia? Good to see you.
How did you get into stand-up comedy?
I had done acting, but the problem with acting is you have to be in a play or you have to be in a production. So with comedy, you could say, well, I got to go out and do a show tonight, or I got to go out and work out, or I got to do an open mic. And so that's how I actually got into comedy. When I got into acting, it was in the 80s, and I did a lot of theater, but there wasn't a lot of on-camera opportunity because they were making movies like Ferris Bueller and Pretty in Pink and not very black-friendly flicks. You know, if you weren't in an Eddie Murphy movie, you probably weren't really working as a black actor.
And did you have an agent at that time?
I had an agent. I don't want to throw out her name because she said, "Are black people calling themselves African American now?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh my God, I've had part for African Americans and I've been submitting Africans." That's the kind of agent I had. But, you know, this was kind of like in the what was going on in the 80s.
Not much has changed.
Not a whole lot has changed.
What made you think you could do stand-up?
Because I was funny. I'd just been funny in school, you know, cut up. No, I don't think I was any funnier than anybody else, but I was consistent and I liked doing comedy. Even when I was a musician, I wrote some songs, and they were all along the funnier novelty, not Weird Al Yankovic, but more like, who was that guy that did Bertha Butt Boogie?
That was Jimmy Castor.
Right, along that line. So a guy, his name was Greg Pittman. I was working at a mortgage company, and he said that you should go and try to, you know, since I know you write stuff and you jot down stuff, Tom Joyner's looking for writers. So I went down, I did the Tom Joyner show. Brad Sanders was the head writer. I brought in 3 bits, and he bought one that day. And it was like $50, and it changed my world. It's like, really? I just took some time and wrote some stuff, and $50, and Uncle Sam didn't know anything about it. This was 30 years ago, so don't worry. You're not getting your money at this point. But nobody knew anything. It was just, here's some cash, and it's like, okay, so I can get next to this. And musically, you have to practice every day. If you're going to be a horn player, you got to practice every day. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like I said, that wave, it kind of went. And then the acting wave, like I said, it was a matter of, but you got to be in theater and you got to, you know, do the plays. Because the sidekick role wasn't really happening in the 80s in film. You had the leading man guys, and you had the comic relief, but I really wasn't a comic at that point. So I would have been the sidekick. And there just weren't enough leading characters to even have sidekicks. That didn't come in until the 90s when hip-hop came in. And then you saw a lot more black sidekicks. Well, by then I was in comedy.
So what was the first room you did stand up in?
I did Marla's Memory Lane, which was over on King Boulevard. I think it's Obama Boulevard right now. They changed.
Okay.
Yeah, they changed the name of it. It's Obama Boulevard. And
no, it was Rodeo.
That's what the one they changed.
Right,
right. So King is still King. Good.
Yes.
I was hoping they wouldn't replace one black guy with we only have one black street in this neighborhood. I did Marla's Memory Lane, and the host, his name was Andrew Mohammed. I don't know if you were familiar with him.
I don't remember him. I mean, I had gone to Marla's, but I don't remember.
He was a nice guy, very nice, but he sounded just like Lou Rawls. And I had no opening line, so I remember going up and I said, "Give it up to Lou Rawls." And the place laughed, and it was my first laugh on stage as a comedian. And it's like, okay, well, I want to do this. And then the rest of my act worked because I had established, okay, well, I'm funny enough, so you can laugh at the next 5 minutes I do, and they laughed at that. And then I just started doing the circuit. I went to Comedy Act Theater, and Robin Harris was hosting. It was my 3rd time on stage. I had called and said, I'm a comedian. I need some stage time. Put me up. Michael Williams said, okay, we're going to put you up this Thursday night. Come on through the club. Just introduce yourself, you know, the host and all that. Hey, Robin Harris, I'm D. Miller John. I'm a comedian. And so he does his thing, and Robin was one of the most hilarious comedians I've ever seen in life, period, to this moment. And then he brings up Martin Lawrence. So Martin goes up and does his thing. I've only been on stage twice before this. The place was filled. I'm talking about Robert was probably there. Robert Townsend was probably there. Because I know Mike Tyson was there. Denzel Washington was there. Wesley Snipes was there. Lakers were there. There was just, the room was full of celebrities. I mean, it was packed. People standing in the back. And I died the death of a million dogs. Yeah, you're finding Marla's Memory Lane, and you were finding, I think I went somewhere else, Page 4, where Nardo Ray used to do. Because they were more kind of like bars.
Right.
This was more like a comedy club environment. These people were
restaurant comedy club.
Yeah. So yeah, I died. It was terrible. And I remember I wanted to leave, and the wife I was married to at the time, I've had more than one. The wife I was married to at the time said, "Oh, you can't go anywhere because if you leave now, you'll never get back up." And you'll be
that
like
was
punk
very
and
smart
all
of
that.
her.
It was. To her credit, she kept me on because it wasn't like I was never going to do comedy again. I just wanted to get out of that doggone room. I just wanted to get away because I knew it. And then Robin, of course, came on and roasted me for about 5 minutes. I had to listen to that, but I didn't die, Yes. And I said, "Wow, well, is that as bad as it gets?" It gets worse than that. I got booed at the Apollo Theater by the entire Apollo. This is when I was I had broken out demilitarized. I had on the beret, and I had on a dashiki, and I had on shades. Assalamu alaikum, and the entire place started booing. And this happened, and now this is funny because it happened in October of 1992. November of 1992, Malcolm X came out. I went back February of 1993 and played the Apollo. Assalamu alaikum, yay! Everybody's on their feet cheer because they didn't understand what I was talking about before. And same place, not the same audience, obviously, but same place, same act, same guy. But a little bit of knowledge changed everything. Speaking of knowledge, I'll tell this one quick story. I went overseas and performed with Doug Stanhope, and that was really cool. Doug is actually a cool guy. And came back and tried to get into the Comedy Store. They were doing Monday night auditions. I had to audition 8 weeks in a row because they just didn't have enough audience. Because she kept saying, "Well, I really like you." This is Mitzi Shore. "I really like you, but I need more people to know if you're really that funny as I think you are." 7 weeks. And so I finally go to the manager. I said, "Look, man, I mean, how often do you guys have to?" He's like, "Well, this is a lot, but, we don't have a big audience. Let me ask you this. When you do hire a comedian to be a regular, how much time do they get to do?" "Well, about 20, maybe 30 minutes max." I said, "I've come here for 7 weeks and given you 10 new minutes every week. You got 70 minutes. So I'm not even going to do the 70 minutes. So, I'm not trying to be a pain or nothing, but I can't just keep coming here, man. I mean, what's the point?" And he said, "Okay, I'll talk to her." And then he came back and told me, "She's going to audition you tonight, and she'll either accept you or say no." That was funny. She said, "Okay, I'm going to sit on down in the booth." You got to sit down in the booth with her like it was a big deal.
Right.
And she said, "I'm going to make you a regular." And I said, "Okay, cool, thank you, I appreciate it." And she said, "I like Whoopsie Wooly." I said, "What?" And she said, "I like Whoopsie Wooly." And I said, "Well, okay, well, who's that?" It's like, "That's what we're going to call you." It's like, well, I was kind of shocked. It's like, oh, well, I walk in with one name, I walk out with another. And a name I did not like. I said, "Well, I got a stage name. I go by Demilitarized." And she said, "Yeah, but I like Whoopsie Wooly." And she did this flourish. Whoopsie Wooly, like that character you play, carefree, happy-go-lucky. And I'm thinking, Whoopsie Wooly sounds like a black guy with a pancake flipper and he's got a rag in his back pocket. He wants you to rub his woolly head, and it just struck as coon to me. And I was like, well, I don't know about this Whoopsie Wooly, And I know a lot of comics would have said, "Man, you was getting in the Comedy Store in 1991? Are you kidding? You know how many brothers was in there? You could count them on your hand, honestly."
Oh, no, I was there.
Okay, you remember that era, and it's like, but I'll be a coon though. It's like, what, I got to go to Hollywood and then I'll coon and then I'll come back to the neighborhood and act like no, I couldn't do it. So the night she said, "Well, come by Sunday." I said, "Well, can we use my regular name, Darryl Littleton?" She said, "Okay, well, we'll figure it out." In other words, you gonna be Whoopsie Wooly. She said, "Come by Sunday night, your name will be on the sheet for the for the order." And I get there and I'm looking at the sheet and it's like, I don't see Demilitarized. It's like, well, okay, maybe she put Darryl Littleton. Don't see no Darryl Littleton. It's like, oh God, no.
Whoopsie Wooly.
Whoopsie Wooly is right there at 9:15. So back then they didn't have, DJs or anything.
Right.
They had the piano player.
Right.
He introduce you and play piano and you go on up to stage. I go to the piano player because I'm looking like this comic up there and I'm next. And I know I'm not going up to Whoopsie Wooly. Because it's like anything else. If you do something once you will be
stuck.
Yeah. You cannot say, "Well, I've never done that." Yeah, you have. You were Whoopsie Wooly that Sunday, so you're gonna be Whoopsie Wooly from now on. I went to the piano player and I said, "Hey man, who's next?" And he said, "Whoopsie Wooly." I said, "Well, he's not here." And he said, "Well, he hasn't shown up yet." I said, "He's never going to show. He's never, ever going to be here." He's like, "Well, what's wrong? Is he okay?" It's like, there is no Whoopsie Wooly, man. You seem like a cool guy. There is no Whoopsie Wooly. Mitzi wants me to be Whoopsie Wooly, but I can't be Whoopsie Wooly. he was a white guy, but he even understood. He said, I get it. It's like, yeah, just think about the name, dude. So he said, okay, I get it. And he said, I said, just bring me up to Darryl Littleton, and I'll talk to Mitzi later. And then after that, she said, okay, you can be D. Militon. I checked with a couple of comics. And, so they put my picture on the wall, but they never did put my name on the wall. Never did.
I didn't get.
And I was a regular until the LA riots came out, and then they gave me less and less. They would give me like 5 spots a week. I was doing okay. People invited people for showcases, got some stuff out of it. And then what happened was the LA riots came, and they cut me down to like 1 spot a week, and then nothing. And so I asked, and I said, well, Mitzi's going to let you go. She says, your comedy is too angry. And I remember I laughed just like that. I said, wait a minute. You got Andrew Dice Clay, Sam Kinison, and Paul Mooney. My comedy is angry? I think my comedy is just slightly perturbed, but okay. I mean, what are you going to do?
Wow.
So that's my Mitzi short story.
It didn't stop your flow.
No, not at all.
When did you figure out that you could also write comedy for other people as well as yourself?
Somebody wanted to use my material. I was approached by Teddy Carpenter, comic from D.C., and he said, I'm getting ready to do a pilot. I want to see if you would write some stuff for me. Prior to that, I had written for D.L.
Okay.
And
D.L. Hughley.
D.L. Hughley actually is the first one to approach me now that I think about it. Teddy was the first one to hire me in a TV room writing position. Paul Mooney was the head writer. And, this was my first writing room thing. But D.L. had a show on KCAL. And I can't remember the name of it. KCAL is Channel 9 out in Los Angeles. It was a short-lived show because his competition that very season was Arsenio Hall, first season of Arsenio. So they had the same time slot. Nobody was watching Dio. And he had said, well, I'm going to have you write for me.
And this was before he did the BET comic.
This was before BET.
Okay.
And then he had said, look, the writer that I have right now is not going to be with me, past this initial stage, so I'm going to need a writer. Would you write for me for this KCAL show? Yes, I will. And we had met and all that. And then Arsenio cut him off of that, but then he got BET. He had a guy named Vince D writing for him.
Right.
And Vince D, him and Vince were friends. They were buddies. But what happened was I broke my leg in 1993. And when I was going through the rehab on it, and I lost a lot of stuff with a broken leg, movies and everything else. But during the rehab of it, I went to the barbershop, got my hair cut, left, and I wasn't doing anything else. So I said, well, let me go back to the barbershop. Went back to the barbershop. D.O. was there. He said, my wife can't come pick me and the kids up. Could you drive us home? Drove him home and let him know that I was interested in doing writing because I'd broken my leg. I'd lost a lot of opportunities. So in front of the camera stuff, but I needed something going like right now before I could reestablish that. And he said, well, just write for me. And I said, what about Vince? He said, well, Vince and me are friends, and Vince will do stuff like I'm getting ready to go on stage. You say, talk about fat women. And it's like, I'm looking for notes, and so he's, And I said, no, I'll write for it. So I wrote for him, and then when he left BET, Cedric became the host, and I wrote for him. I wrote for some more. I wrote for Don D.C. Curry. I wrote for Montana Taylor, and then I went overseas and toured around, entertained troops, which was fun. Who
were your mentors when you started comedy? And who were your idols in comedy?
The first people I liked in comedy was Groucho Marx, then Lenny Bruce. I liked Freddie Prinze. I grew up on Dick Gregory. I used to sneak and listen to Richard Pryor and Red Fox. I became a big LaWanda Page fan once I heard her uncut stuff. Not, the Sanford and Son, the real LaWanda Page. Those were the people I really liked coming up. I like Jack Benny too, because I thought Jack Benny's timing was incredible. The people who mentored me when I first got in, Robin Harris took the time, spent time with me. Ronaldo Ray spent a lot of time with me. Rodney Winfield, who people do not talk about. Rodney was incredibly funny. We used to fly from from Burbank to Oakland, back and forth, and do shows every Monday. It was a club called Sweet Jimmy. And the thing about Rodney was so great, and I was just really like, oh, come on, green compared to Rodney. Even if it was alive now, I'd still be green next to him. But he said, I'll host, you headline. Then we go next week, I'll headline, you host. So that way I was able to learn both skills from a guy who was a master. Simply Marvelous was a mentor. Brad Sanders was a writing mentor. Michael Williams at the Comedy Act Theater helped me out, gave me a lot of pointers. Franklin Ajayi. Milton Berle gave me pointers. That was cool.
How did that happen?
Howard Moore. Very cool Milton Berle story. I had met Milton Berle at the Comedy Store. He came and did a set, and this was in like the 90s, early 90s. You don't get to see, you don't think you're going to see Milton Berle or Jack Benny or any of those guys popping, or George Burns. So Milton Berle did a set, and I shook his hand later and said hi, and good to see you and all that. Then I went on the road, and I was gone for like 3 weeks. When I came back, this was LAX before 9/11. Mm-hmm. So cars could just drive up to the front and people could hang out and all that. So Milton Berle pulls up in a limo. As people get out, they open the door. Milton Berle comes out, and I got my bags with me, stickers and all that on them. And I walked over and I said, "Hey, Mr. Berle, I saw you at the Comedy Store about a month ago, and I shook your hand and all that." It's like, "Oh yeah, I performed there." And he said, "So," and he saw the bags. He said, "You're a comedian." I said, "Yeah, I'm a comedian." He said, "So where you coming from?" He said, "You were just on the road?" And I said, "Yeah, I just did over here and over here." And he said, "Really? How would a crowd?" So we're talking comedy. His guy comes over to him, and he's giving me pointers. He said, "Look, when you get certain crowds like this, blah, 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 when you get certain crowds like that," he said, "Well, how are the crowds now, though? I know that's how it was when I was going around." He said, "I'm like, man, not much change. I mean, what you just said." And he said, "Now, if you ever have a problem." So he was giving me a little advice as quick as he could. His guy comes over and says, "Milton, we got to catch a plane." He said, whoa, I got time. Look, I'm talking to a fellow comedian." That was really cool. That was, it was like when Robin Harris told me, "You're good enough now to go out and make money." So there were certain stamps I was getting from certain people. Witherspoon helped me a lot. Witherspoon told me about TV. John Witherspoon told me about TV. I can't leave out Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory helped me out a lot. Dick Gregory gave me a lot of advice. So there were a lot of the senior comics. Dick Gregory was funny, though, because Dick Gregory has cursed me out in his lifetime 3 times in my lifetime. And then he'll turn right around and call you a genius on another occasion. It won't be like he'll curse you out and say, "But I think you're a genius." It'll be a whole nother occasion. He'll curse you out, and it'll be, that's it. He left you alone, and then you'll talk to him another time, and you'll be talking like the curse had never happened. And then he'll basically, at the end of it, he'll ask you, he asked me something about numerology. When I was born, he said, "Well, according to that, you're a genius, and I've been talking to you, you're a genius." And it's like, well, last time you called me an asshole, but okay. All right, I'll be a genius this time. Paul Mooney has done the same. I used to have a saying, if you have been cursed out by Dick Gregory or Paul Mooney, you're really not a comedian. They will curse you out. And then they'll turn around and tell you what a great act you are, or, how they admire you.
Without further ado, I will introduce you first to the fabulous baby, the talented, the amazing, hot and spicy Ludo Vika.
That's me, baby.
Ludo started out as a dancer and then got into comedy and has been headlining for many, many years, along with her husband, Dave Conrad. They have a show called I Love Ludo, and Ludo also has a one-woman show that we'll talk about, but she is super fabulous, and she was one of the hot and spicy mamitas. And next to her is the award-winning,
Yes.
amazing actress, comedian. She not only was part of Hot and Spicy Mamitas, but she was part of the first group that I put together with Chacha Sandoval called Funny Ladies of Color.
Yeah.
So please help me welcome these amazing women to Come and Says Mamita.
Yay! We applaud ourselves.
That's right. I want to talk about how you started in the business.
Something happened in my life when I was on the top of my career as a dancer. My little sister contracted HIV. She became HIV, and her son. And I wanted to talk on stage and tell people that they needed to protect themselves. So that was the force that drove me to comedy. I saw so many hundreds of people every night. I wanted to let those people know about it. So I came to LA and I took this comedy class with Judy Carter. And she, first time I stand on stage, she goes, "Oh my God, you're so exotic. You don't have to say anything, just stand there." So that's what I used to do to open my show.
For those of you who don't know, Judy Carter was the comedy teacher in LA at that time. She was a comic, and then she wrote a book called Stand Up Comedy, which is huge in the stand-up world. And she taught classes as well as privates.
Yes. And I just, I graduated from her class, and then I was completely hooked, and I started doing my comedy shows, and I used to give condoms in the end of the show to tell people
To have safe sex.
to have safe sex, and I used to sing this song like I got condoms for you to take home. I mean, it was
Take
whatever. I mean, it was so, Mitzi was like, take the condom thing out of your act because you're gonna be the next Roseanne Barr. She, I was like the last girl that she discovered. Actually, she gave me my own show in the main room, so I was like, okay, well, I gotta do what she said, because she's directing me. My husband took me to the comedy store because he was a regular there. And as soon as she met me, she's like, "Okay, this is it. You are it.
You were perfect. For her.
Exactly."
Yes.
And I was our time at that time. It was like Latino time, which is 20 years later, and I'm still waiting for the Latino time. So
The decade of the Latinos.
yeah. But I have done very well. I have. Work with the greatest, Paul Rodriguez, George Lopez, Sam Kinison, George Burns. I mean, I have worked with a lot of, Sammy Davis Jr., Steve Harvey. I have worked with, besides us, the Mamitas,
Yes.
which we were the stars of my life. So to me, I can't complain. I have been very blessed. It has not been
Amen.
easy, but it has been a blessing.
Sometimes blessings aren't easy. That's why they're blessings.
Exactly. So, and now here I am. I am a headliner. I have done my one-woman show, which was incredible. HBO wanted to do a scripted series about it,
And it's called?
Elvis Under the Mango Tree. The Elvis is the abbreviation for Ludo Vika.
Oh.
Yes, so Elvis Under the Mango Tree. And it was a biographical story of me being a dancer and turning into a comedian, and it was wonderful. And I'm still plugging away. The goal for this year is to get my half-hour comedy special.
Excellent. It is time.
I wanted to have a film already for this year, but still I'm working, because I'm a perfectionist, which is not that good all the time. But hey.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Good timing for
And
that.
Dyana, I want to start with you.
I really came to pursue acting. And if you remember at the time Lydia almost literally pushed me out on the stage for Funny Ladies of Color.
I did.
You did.
I did. I said, do it.
Yeah, she
Do
called
it.
me and she goes, "You can do it. You're funny." And you broke me in easily because first I emceed.
Right.
I
Right.
hosted
You
the
hosted the
evening and brought everybody on stage. And then I observed. I listened. I saw you.
But you were ready. I mean, it wasn't really, I don't think I've ever done that to anybody else. But you were ready. It was just needing a space.
It was.
That was it,
It
because
was.
you
I
had
needed that
already
push.
Yeah,
I needed that push.
You were ready. You were, first of all, back then you still are, but back then you were like this firecracker. You were buzzing everywhere and doing everything, and you were like, I'm here and I will not be denied. And so it just seemed to me like comedy was
Get
where
on
you
that
needed
stage
to
and
be.
do it.
Do it,
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah, because you were too big. At that time, they weren't giving us the opportunities
Right.
of letting our personalities be.
Oh, wait
Right.
a minute. At that time?
Well, yeah, but
At this
in
time.
1980, from like the 80s on, there were not. You had to be
No.
in this little box.
And especially
Yeah.
women not doing stand-up. Latina women, forget about it. So
Yeah.
we really were groundbreakers.
yeah, and
you know?
so
Yeah.
and so you were always colorful, which was something that was never going to be allowed on television. Just
Yeah.
just to get a role, you were not going to be given the Julie Brown opportunity that Julie Brown got.
Right.
Julie Brown was Anglo
Right.
actress, comedian who very much was in that same genre of you.
Yeah.
That she was kooky and she wore these colorful clothes.
remember her. Yeah.
And she got a MTV show
yes.
and
Yeah.
did a
Yeah.
couple of movies. And
Yes.
she was in class with me. So it was like they could do it and they could blow up. We could do it and we would get penalized.
Yes.
And so the fact of you being colorful, it was like, oh no, she's got to take the stage. She's got to take the stage. So that was
But there
it.
were a lot of contradictions because I remember, I mean, I wrote this bilingual rap song. It was a play on words, chilaquiles and chipotle enchiladas and all that. But the rest of my material was in English.
Right.
With an accent, maybe some of it, because then I started doing Ramona.
Right. I was just going to
Pomona.
say, yes.
My agent comes to see me and says, great, lose the wig. A manager comes to see me and says, you didn't tell me your set was in Spanish. I'm like, did you listen to the set that I did? Because last time I heard it was in English.
It was in English.
I
yeah.
know. So there was this resistance for us to be ethnic. You need to cross over. So in other words,
But you needed to be
whitewash.
ethnic in a very
Very
particular way.
very
Yes,
little
yes,
ethnic,
yes.
it's like maybe throw in a little Spanish word, but when you start talking about chelo, chato, chuy, chon, it's like, oh my God, what is she talking about? Oh my God, we don't speak Spanish.
I love it.
So, but the contradiction was the Laugh Factory started doing Latino nights, and the line would be around the corner. Latinos wanted to see real Latinos with spice and, authenticity on the stage. And meanwhile, the industry didn't know what to do with us.
Yeah, they still don't know.
I went there and I'm all casual, and I did my whole sketch show because I had wrote, directed, and produced like an 18-member cast of sketch comedy, and so I already had road tested all of these jokes and things like that and characters, and I was teaching some of them how to do those characters. I said, let me just do them. I did them back to back to back on the stand-up stage, and I got laughs, but there were no segues because they were sketches. So I was like, and so then it was like I didn't have the format of stand-up. And this couple had sat at the bar, and they said, "How long have you been doing it?" I said, "This is my first night," and I was forever hooked. Now, foundation of this is my mother, Candace Lilly, showcased for Mitzi Shore way back in the day
At the comedy store.
Mm-hmm. And I remember it had to be circa 1982 because she was doing this bit about Vanessa Williams winning Miss America and how America just didn't know what to do when they felt, well, she's black, African American. And so my mom made a sash. She was giving you prop comedy and giving you, of African American Miss America. And she'd gone to the club. Mitzi loved her, and then Mitzi wanted her back. And I remember when she had gone back a few times, and then she goes, I don't want to be anywhere around that, because at that time in the 80s, it is known as to be perhaps snort
Debauchery.
heaven. Debauchery. Can we say okay, coke heaven. And my mom, as a single mom, she was like, my mom, she really didn't drink, all these different things. So it wasn't her scene, and so she felt very uncomfortable being around that, even though she had been in the industry in another aspect of it as a makeup artist in the Black exploitation era, and is even in a couple of those films as cameos. She was like, this scene, I don't think I can bring my daughter, because you would have to have your daughter with you, or figure out nighttime stuff every
Single
night to be in
mom.
the rooms, or
That's
on
right.
the road. You'd have to figure out a way for your children. As a single mom, it didn't say, yeah. So, but that is her love. That is her thing of funny, and she would always write scripts. I remember her working at the lot, Paramount lot, and Solid Gold with Rick Dees, and doing funny scripts and writing and submitting. And so it's like that's what I grew up on, but it never connected for me until later. And so when I did the stand up, it was so fun. It was one of those whoosh, the aha moment, or the satori, as I say, where you go, oh, you have an awakening
Right.
about yourself. And so I went back to campus. I said, this is what I want to do. I stepped away from theater at that point, and I just started doing stand-up. I was recommended by the godfather of comedy there, Tony Sparks, and Blaine Capatch, one of the luminaries of the alternative comedy scene, recommended me for Punchline, because you had to get a recommendation to be able to get in. Did that. They recorded the set. I used that set to submit to things. It was a
And
15-minute
this
set.
is the set that got you the
This is exactly
the manager.
That's what happened. So it was 15-minute set. It was all the material I had, but you wouldn't know it. And I submitted it to the San Francisco Punchline competition, and I got in, became a finalist, and there were amazing people in that. Should I say the names? Okay, there was Wanda Sykes was in there. I was just a baby right there at UC Berkeley. Wanda Sykes was there. Mitch Hedberg, Shang, Carlos Alazraqui. I mean, there were all these people that were well steeped in the game, and here I am going, I just got my little 15 minutes of material, you know. I was so out of my league, but I had made my way, and I did not win, but I was one of the 3 people that were chosen by Carsey Warner for a meeting, as well as I got my agency, my UTA was my first agent through there, and management with Arthur Spivak. So I was set, you know, in terms of that. But they're still trying to figure out, okay, so how do I pay for a plane to LA? How do I get back there? And that's when I got back here, and I stayed with my brother for a while.
So you kind of broke out quickly here. I mean, you got into the store, you got a development deal, then got another development deal. You started doing commercials. You started you just started taking off. I mean,
my first club I was passed at was at the Comedy Store, so I became a paid regular at the Comedy Store. It was my first club. The second one was the Laugh Factory, and it was an amazing time. I mean, I just lived and breathed, ate, slept, and drank comedy and performance. And what ended up happening is that the TV started taking off a lot, and so it was kind of flipping the time that I would spend in comedy clubs. It was more so preparing for my auditions, or if I booked a series that I'm focused on that as well.
And you have a great story with Richard Pryor.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
At the Comedy
Store. Yes. Richard Pryor, it was such an honor when he would come into the store that everybody would want to watch and hang out and see him. There was one night that I had to follow him, and he was on the marquee.
This was in the main room,
or
the OR?
He was in the OR.
Okay.
And they popped in, and people, it was packed because people were like, see Richard Pryor literally on Sunset Strip. Now, what they didn't know, what they didn't remember, his affliction.
He was getting multiple
sclerosis.
Mm-hmm.
So there was with heavy heart in the room. It would take about 5 minutes to assist him from his wheelchair up to that stage, and he would do his act. And he wasn't, prowling around the stage like he used to. He was sitting there and speaking about, but still anchored in what was actually happening in his world, and the simplicity of daily things, and you're hearing his comedic mind work these daily things, which is different than what they're used to seeing, and so you can feel the audience. There's a heaviness because they're seeing him in a different light.
Right.
And
they're seeing a fragile
Richard
Pryor.
They're seeing him affected, and it would also be 5 minutes to help him, assist him off the stage, and he would sit in the back room next to Mitzi's seat, and I was as they were helping his chair, because usually when it's the next comic, they say your name and you bounce up there, and I couldn't as they were doing that, and they were like, get up there. And Mitzi was like, get up there, Sandy, get up there, get on that stage. Okay. And I go and I do my set, but understand, because it's Richard Pryor, people are there, and some of the room just cleared out because that's all they wanted to see. And there's others who were all shoving their little napkins up in his face, going, "Will you sign this?" As he's sitting in the seat. So I'm doing my set, and first thing I say was, can you say sacrificial lamb? And I was like, this kind of set will put a hair on your chest. I'm just trying to do my stuff, trying to be up, but while people are walking,
right.
Wait a second, and then I go upstairs, I was like, oh my God, and Mitzi goes, and her signature voice, she goes, Sandy, come over here. Richard wants to say something. in TV. And I went over and I leaned at them because they were sitting next to her, and I leaned low, and all of these people were holding up their napkins to him. Could you sign this? Can you sign this? Can you sign this? And he reached up his hand like he was parting the Red Sea and just like reached over, and it was fragile. It's fragile, and he reached over from my hand and said, "Hold your hand. I'll show you." And he goes, "You're very funny." And I was like, oh. I said, "You should see me when I don't have to follow you." and he just went, and Mitzi just leaned over and smiled, and I just bowed and I said, thank you for, I just showered him with gratitude, and he just smiled and he just nodded, and that showered me, and it I'm cloaked in that.
This was after you did Def Comedy Jam?
Yeah, because by the time I was there, what brought me to LA, I was, a still struggling college student, and on stage, and just like, how am I gonna, what do I do after I do this performance? But it all started coming together in a whirlwind. But I was very, we talk about artistry and the process of an artist. I was very focused and making things happen. Some call it manifesting, or creating things in process.
Let's talk about manifesting,
Yeah.
because you were the one who turned me on to Anthony Robbins.
Tony Sparks put me on to Tony Robbins. He gave me a cassette tape flap of Tony Robbins and Les Brown, and I was listening to this stuff, and as a struggling artist, top ramen and bologna sandwiches in the microwave.
Fried bologna sandwiches.
And microwave bologna sandwiches, and going, I believe. walking your success. I'm just like, if they say so, and walking in belief, and also Shakti Gawain, if I must say. Shakti Gawain's creative visualization was so powerful. And all the different aspects of your life to focus on that. I was manifesting at an incredible rate. I was just in the zone. It puts you in the zone because you're able to be aware of synchronicities and opportunities. You're like, I should call so and so, or I should go to this because that's part of, you start to see connections in your way in the world, in the way you move, and the things that you look into or follow up with. It's not just something random that shows up, but it influences you, and your instincts kick in, and you're led in a beautiful way. And so I was manifesting things that people were just like, you just started. I mean, and I'd have been doing stand-up, honestly, 6 months, 6 months, less than a year. Before I got my back-to-back development deals. But once again, the writing was there. It had been road tested. The character work was there. And so it's not like it was just randomly, there was artistry behind that influenced that. And then you get into other things too, being a woman in the industry, being sometimes the only one, and even today you'll find one woman or no woman on a lineup, and I like to call those sausage fest shows. Sausage Festivus. But
who have been your mentors in stand-up? Guys who have because for the most part, it's been men who have kind of taken you under their wing.
I think you'll find a variety within the comedic community. You'll find your heroes, from the full spectrum of heroes to vultures. You know what I mean? And there are some that will take you under the wing and are so protective of you, and see your light and see your way in this industry, and believe in you, and keep you encouraged despite what's going on.
Who are a few of those people for you? Because for me, it is Jackson Perdue.
Yes.
It is Darryl Savad. It is Charles Cozart. There were a few of the Comedy Store regulars that when I started, like kind of rallied around me and helped me along.
Yeah.
And Darryl Savard was great at helping me learn how to write.
Yeah.
That there's a specific way of writing stand up that's different to just writing.
Right. I have a few. Definitely would be Richard Pryor would be the first. I would say Shane Forbes, definitely. The beasts, too. Robert Townsend. It would also be, I recall, Arsenio Hall. I had to follow Arsenio Hall, and he was like, "Great set." I'm like, "Great career." I was like, "I got this." There's so many.
Arsenio is also a supporter, because I remember being at the Comedy Store, having to follow him.
Yes.
And again, when you follow somebody big, the room empties out after them.
Absolutely.
And so the room had emptied out, and I was trying to get my footing, and Arsenio was in the back. Do your set. Just do your set, and that calmed me and allowed me to. And I remember that was such a gracious.
Yes.
That was so gracious, because sometimes you had very very high profile comics who would come in. They would bump you, and then when you got on stage, they were rude and they were talking while you were doing your set, or I encountered some of the ugliness of that. So Arsenio has a good place in my heart, because he and when he would come in, he was easy. It wasn't like, don't talk to me because I'm Arsenio Hall.
Right.
So I really appreciated that.
I would say Rick Overton.
Yes.
Charlie Hill.
Oh, Charlie Hill.
Famous Native American
Love
comic.
Charlie
In
Hill.
your face, bold trailblazer. And he was such a champion, and he would give me books of influence and things like that. And
Me
I'd say,
too.
Sandy, I want you to read this. I want you to check this out. And I have to say, Tony Sparks. Tony Sparks was my first in the Bay Area. Godfather Comedy was my first champion, and he's and just teaching me the rules of comedy, to understand why I knew someone was funny, but even go deeper and to scrape those surfaces so that you understand why this is funny. My nickname, you said called it Black
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett, but in college, my nickname was Bluesy, as a Black Lucille Ball, and so that is my foundation, is my facial expressions and the physicality and the playing with the audience and the raised eyebrow, because that's what I learned. I grew up doing impressions.
You do screwball comedy very well.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's
that was my first sense of comedy, was of doing impressions. Like my first impression was Charlie Chaplin, and I would do that, or I would do things to stay up at night. So I would take like the plastic tree. This is real, but a plastic tree, and late at night after my bedtime, I would just kind of walk into the living room with everybody and kind of walk behind the tree with the tree across the room. And because they would start laughing, Sandy, okay, you can stay up. And I'm like, yes. I mean, I was rewarded for being funny, and and so I use those different tools and understand that it is different for a woman, and it's changing. We've so many women that are broken through now, but it's not always like that, and we still have our challenges. And I just am finding my way. I'm finding my way back to stand, to the point where I love it. I stepped away from it because I had so much TV and other things going on that I began to miss it and understand that it's intrinsic to what I do and expressing myself.
What do you love about stand-up?
I love, what's different about stand-up than theater, or in theater, or film and television, which the foundation of those are theater as well, is that you get instant feedback from the audience on your thoughts, your reaction, on what you're doing. If a singer sings a song, the audience may not like that song, they think, oh well, but in stand-up, you live or die by that sword. If they don't like you. That's how it feels. So it's such a teetering thing, but when you're on, I don't think there's a better feeling when you're on that flying carpet of humor, taking the audience on a ride, making the audience bend, is what they say, is when they're laughing so hard that they're bowling over. That is a joy. And so my goal at this point is to follow my comedy brethren that are beast modes, and to be able to just grab the audience by the neck and not let go. When I was studying at NYU, there was a comic that was performing in Washington Square Park to random people, and his name was Dave Chappelle. And
Was
it was
he with
so
Charles
fascinating.
Barnett?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
He was with Charles Barnett, also a legend
Who was
in
his
New York,
mentor.
Who was his mentor.
That's right.
And it was so fascinating because all of us were just waiting to get our spots at Boston Comedy Club in New York. But Dave Chappelle didn't wait. There was a boldness to him and Charles Barnett, because they would stand in Washington Square Park, do stand-up, take turns, and then pass around a hat. They would do 3 shows a day, minimum 3 shows a day. And I had such respect for that, because it's one thing when people come to a comedy club, they paid entrance fee or not, they've got a 2-drink minimum, they're there to see comedy. When you have to be so engaging that people stop what they're doing and where they're going in New York to listen to you, that builds a certain muscle. And to see him do that, was exciting and baffling at the same time. It's like, this is fascinating, because people sitting there walking the dog and turning around, doing their thing. But and also that muscle of, I don't care if you aren't paying attention. I'm going to do what I'm doing and be so engaging that you will stop what you're doing. So that was interesting to see that. That's where I want to go. That's what I'm focusing on. And so there's a whole renewed interest and joy to stand up now, in a new way than what I had before, and dabbling into territories I hadn't touched before.
What would you say to a young woman out there who wants to pursue stand-up?
You do it. If the mic is calling you, you do it. And it's set up now where you can get up more often, in a lot of different places. It's available now in places we didn't have those options. If we weren't booked at one of the main rooms, you weren't getting up unless it was some random show that hardly ever happened. With now the inundation of comedy, a lot of venues have that as a thing. Get on the open mic, speak your truth, do your comedy. If it calls to you, you must do it.
Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to one of my comedy mentors and heroes, one of the best comics in the world, Jackson Perdue. How did you start in comedy? What made you want to start doing comedy?
I think doing comedy is just a calling, like the ministry. I call it my left-handed ministry. I think you're just born that way, and that's what happened. I was born, and that's what it led up to.
What was the epiphany that said, oh, okay, I'm actually going to go to a club now?
Well, you know what? At first I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a novelist. When I was 19, I was thinking, hey, I don't have anything to write about. I don't know anything, right? So then I said, well, let me go down to a journalist. But then you got to go to school for that. And I went to San Diego State. Then I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to go to class. I said, forget that. Then I could just be a joke writer. That's one sentence. I could write that. I got to crank out a sentence. And that's the first money I ever made, was writing some jokes for Joan Rivers.
Wow.
And that was like
And
one-liners.
how did you connect doing that?
I think at the Comedy Store, and then she used to work out her stuff at a place in Beverly Hills called Ye Little Club, and I'd go over there and talk to her and give her the jokes, and she bought jokes from all young guys. That was her rep, low-paying new guys for some one-liners.
And how did you get to the Comedy Store?
The first stand-up I ever did was at San Diego State on their amateur night. I did it twice there. The first time I did it, it went okay. Mm-hmm. The second time I did it was so bad that they turned off the light and the mic. And the only laugh I got is when I said, he did say comedian, didn't he? But as I walked around the campus that week, people saw it and would encourage me. Go, hey man, I saw your thing. That was great. Hang in there, blah, blah, blah. But then the Comedy Store opened in Pacific Beach. Wasn't in La Jolla yet. So I went down there and I got on the amateur night. There was only 2 amateurs in town at that time in 1976. And it went just like I had it in my head. All the laughs are right there. And then that's when I realized it's the venue. You got to be at the proper venue. you know. And at that time, in the early 70s or mid 70s, most people had never seen a stand-up comic live anyway. At the San Diego State thing, it was all folk singers, you know, singing these coffee house songs, and you know, then me. And so when I got to the right venue, because people came there to laugh, came there for the comedy, then I started hitchhiking to the Comedy Store in Hollywood.
Wow. All the way from San Diego.
Well, that was nothing, because I had hitchhiked to New York City
What?
and back when I was 18. That was just right up the street. This is in the 70s when you could hitchhike. I'd come up on a Sunday night when they had Improv had their open mic. I just tried to hang out all night and go to the Comedy Store on Monday, and then, you know, hitchhike back.
Wow.
That's why I don't feel sorry for anybody, new people whining about, hey, you know, shut up and pay your dues. And then sometimes I would come up here. That's when I met Danny Mora. I had come up here and I was late about 5 minutes because I was hitchhiking, right? And so I told Danny, that's when he was running the Monday Night Ride, and I said, hey, you know, I came from San Diego, hitchhiking, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and he said, well, you know what? That's showbiz. And showbiz, it's cold. And I thought, all right, I'm in show business. It is cold, that's right. And I felt part of the business, you know, like, all right, I'm in showbiz now, and it is cold, that's right. And I could just not be discouraged at that time. Even when I was homeless, living in my car, I just thought of that as romantic. Because I had heard that Joan Rivers, you know, Tom Dreesen, Jay, everybody had slept in their car. That was just a rite of passage. So I would be reading my Lenny Bruce autobiography in the backseat of my car and sleeping. I just thought of that the other day when this heat wave just passed, because when I was homeless in the summer, it was 105 like every day. I was sleeping in the back of that car, and I had sweated so much during the night that when I woke up the next day, I couldn't even stand up erect because I had sweated, so my body was just all cramped up, you know.
Man.
But yeah, I thought that was part of the package, you know. That's when I call the time I lived in Montego. Because I was living in a 1968 Mercury Montego.
Oh, that's funny.
But how, you're asking me how I got out of that situation?
No, I want to know what made you get there and how long you were there before you got out.
When I first moved here, I moved in with my mother, who was living here temporarily, and she got me this gig managing an apartment, so I paid no rent, which was great, right? But it had this cat, and the landlord told me to get rid of the cat repeatedly, and I'd always say, yeah, get rid of the cat. The damn cat likes to sit in the damn window. And so he got me thrown out. The cat got me thrown out. So I met this chick. I was selling sandwiches. I'd go in these buildings in Wilshire and sell these sandwiches and, you know, for lunchtime, office workers.
I remember, not that you did it, but I remember I worked at Casablanca Records. The guy would come with a little bucket and have sandwiches and salads.
Yeah, exactly. It was called Movable Feast.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And so I met this chick in one of the buildings, and she was going to take my cat. And then we hooked up, and I ended up living with her. And then she kicked me out. Then that was my car. So, you know, there I was. But how I got out of it was I was doing a showcase at the Hyatt House, Skippy Lowe's showcase next to the Comedy Store, you know, for people who couldn't get on at the store. They had good singers over there. So I met this singer named Stevie Woods, who later had a couple of hits.
Guy.
Yeah.
I knew Stevie Woods.
Yeah, he was on Motown
and Atlantic. He had a couple
Steal
of hits
the Night,
on.
and he passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh no.
Yeah, he went to actually made a career for himself in Germany and had a family in Germany, and became a star in Germany. But he took me out of off the street, and we lived right there by the apartments by Pink Dot Liquor Store, right there on La Cienega and Sunset. Right, we had no furniture, no money, but a bunch of drugs. You know, had all the drugs, but that was it. And so that's how I got out of that.
You're starting to pursue your stand-up, and what was the thing that gave you a breakthrough?
Probably when I started working for Mitzi Shore at the Comedy Store.
Mitzi was the owner
of the
club.
Comedy Store.
Yes.
And so I became her gopher, the messenger boy, right? And I had a company car. And then from that, she made me Polly's babysitter. So I babysat her kids, Peter and Polly. I named Polly the Weasel. So I got in, you know, through the family and was, you know, kind of got in tight with Mitzi and the kids. And then I just started getting spots there and started getting better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what was your first road trip outside of the Comedy Store?
That was with Mooney, Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney gave me my first jobs out of town and out of state. The first out of town gig I did with him was in San Francisco at the Punchline, and him and I and his family, we drove up there. And then the out of state gig was in Texas, because Sandra Bernhard was going to open for him, but she got a part in King of Comedy movie, which made her, And so I got that fallout spot from Sandra, and so that was my first out-of-state gig. And that's all I wanted to do. My dream was just to be a comedian and get on an airplane and go to strange cities. I always likened it to like being a hitman. You go there, you kill, get your cash, get on a plane, go home.
What is one of the things that you've taken away from working out at the Comedy Store that you use everywhere?
Well, the Comedy Store is the top place, was, or maybe still is, I don't know, but certainly was at that time. That was like being in Harvard and Yale, I say. And so when I would go to the Chuckle Hut in Ohio or Iowa or something, if I ever felt intimidated, I'd remind myself, hey man, you come from Harvard. You come from, the top place. What are you doing being intimidated by this little shitty room? That would straighten me out. La Jolla Comedy Store is my favorite room. So if I was in another strange room somewhere, I'd always imagine that I was in La Jolla, just to trick my own mind. And so that's how I adapted. But again, basically having the confidence coming from the Comedy Store, that's the pinnacle. Everybody's trying to get there, and that's where I come from. So,
First of all, as a black woman or a biracial woman working in stand-up, a lot of times you're the only woman. What is that feeling like for you?
It's like sometimes it's really fun, but then sometimes it's also like it's a lot of weight. Like it's always nice when there's multiple girls on the lineup because then you don't feel pressure. Like when you're the only girl, you're like, especially if you're in a place where it's like they don't get comedy that often or they don't see like female women being funny. There is a sense of like a pressure, like, okay, I have to perform well. But I try not to think about that anymore because as we know, the more you think about things like that, the less it is to have fun on stage. So I just try to, I try to let the jokes speak for themselves and just kind of do what I've got to do. And, and I do have, I have been blessed. I have, like, a lot of guy mentors that are really nice and, like, take me under their wing. But it is, like, there still is a lot to be had with navigating the waters. I think it's also, like, you have to, sometimes I don't have the luxury of, like, kind of, like being like, okay, I'm going to just wing it tonight. Like, I really kind of have to come with, like, the heat on, like, as far as, like, because I'm so new that it's still, like, you still kind of always have to make sure that, like, you
got to prove yourself.
You got to prove yourself, and you got to make sure, especially if they're not booking women, that they'll book another woman because you were really good, or, like, they had the audience had a good time with you. And it's also just kind of, like, I do love when you can, like, show someone...
They underestimate
you and you can like prove, like, I love that feeling. I love that. I live for that. It's great.
As a black woman,
yeah,
your type of humor is not black ghetto.
Yeah, no, it definitely is not.
And so when you get on stage, sometimes people have a preconceived idea what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go in the other direction.
Yeah, they're expecting me to be like, oh, child, like that's what they're expecting, and then I tend to run around wearing scarves and cravats, and I don't know, but yes, I mean that's how. Oh, if this is your first time seeing me, please don't think I just wear scarves on stage, and that was a weird thing I just said.
But that's like your little signature.
But it is. But I'm just saying that, like, yeah, I'm more. I feel like I'm very polite and I'm optimistic and I'm not about to like read anyone in the room.
When you get people attacking you from the audience, you get hecklers. How do you deal with it?
Honestly, that's a good question. I'm still learning. I had some 7-year-old hecklers on TikTok, and I was just like, I'm just going to ignore these people. But, like, if they were real live people, then, like, yeah, I would have to talk. But, like, it's not a good look to go after 7-year-olds. But, so I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go after 7-year-old children. But I have had grown adults kind of attack me before, like, while I'm on stage, being like, I don't like this joke, or I don't like you, or da-da-da-da. When that happens, it's kind of like you just have to be confident in who you are and, like, just pivot more into it. In a lot of rooms where people are like, who is this girl? Why is she on stage? Why is she talking to us? Why does she look like this? Like, if I go in, like, and I'm me, like, by minute 2.5, we've passed that. They're like, okay, this is the girl. This is what let's just laugh. Like, we are, because I think the probably the weirdest bomb I had, and I learned a lot from it, was the first time I performed in a black room, I bombed so bad that you could actually hear the bartender pouring the alcohol at the bar. Like, that's how quiet the room was. And it was filled. There was like 40 people, maybe 50, 60, but it was like you could hear it was, it like had to go to like the back of the bar. You could hear him pouring a gin. Like, no one talking, just him. And I remember when I got off stage, they were like, clap, for her, and nobody clapped. Nobody. I walked to the back. They were like
Painful.
Looking at me. I had my stuff in the back, so I had to walk all the way to the back, and then I left. And then the thing is, I was like, I'm going to go back next week, because I didn't want the fear in me. And I remember going back, and one of my friends had given me a great piece of advice, and he said, because I told him, I said, I bombed so bad, because he had been to that room, so I was like, oh, he was like, but you're funny, you should have done well, and I was like, but I bombed so bad, and he was like, it probably was because you were more invested in what they were feeling, not in how you were feeling, like, not in the true place of you, and you being like, this is my perspective, this is my truth on stage. You were more like, are they gonna like it, are they gonna... So then he was just like...
Right, you were taking temperature of the room instead of being the thermostat.
Yeah, so he was like, you have to go on stage and kind of have a screw you kind of attitude and just do what you want to do. And so I went back, I did that, and it didn't do a lot better. I actually, one guy, when I got off stage, said, I guess he was sort of funny. And then subsequently I've done black rooms since then, and like have done well, but it's always a learning curve of like a very bad bomb to like kind of you learn something else.
What's your favorite thing about stand-up?
Oh, I guess my favorite thing is like when like everyone's it's like I love the laughing. I love the laughing. My also favorite thing is, like, when you find something on stage or there's, like, a magic moment that just kind of happens where it's, like, the audience really gets you and you get them. And it doesn't happen all the time, but, like, there's, like, just these magical pockets where it's, like, we're all here and we're all feeling this and it feels like there's something new and stuff like that.
What is a piece of advice you would give to somebody who wants to do stand-up?
I guess the thing is just do it and, like, just remember why you're doing it, because it's gonna get hard, it's gonna get crazy, but like the key is just to keep doing it. And then like a practical piece of advice is I would suggest that people start doing like stack mics, which means like you're doing like 3 to 2 mics a night, like when you're first starting, because what happens is like when you're first starting, you're so nervous, right? You're like so nervous. Like I remember getting so nervous and I would not want to go to the mics, and like Beth and David are like, you gotta go to these mics, you gotta do the stuff. I remember getting so nervous. I was like, I don't want to go. And then I'd go to one and I'd be like, okay. And then I'd drive back thinking about, oh, stupid, I shouldn't have said that. I should have said this. I should have said that. Why didn't it work? And I was putting so much pressure on, like, because I was only going like once or twice a week. And then when I started stacking them, it became easier because there wasn't so much pressure, because what happened at the first mic didn't matter because I was going to a second mic. And then by the third mic, I was exhausted and I was like, now I can do like 5 or like 6 or 7, but it's like before then it wasn't like that. And so now it's like easier because there's less pressure. It's just another set. And so then you get calm and you're not like nervous because you're like, well, if this fails, then I've got something else.
How do you go about networking in stand-up comedy?
I feel like how you network is like there's different levels of like networking in comedy. So I think like at first, like if you're just starting out, the first way you network is like you go to open mic. It might take a bit, like it might be like, 3 months, 4 months in, because like people are a little bit hesitant yet to talk to like newcomers. So it's like you slowly start talking to people. And, like, you slowly start, like, oh, okay, I find out, like, this is over here, or this other thing is over here, or, like, just kind of slowly networking that way. And then when you start getting on shows, it's, like, then you can start networking with, like, the people that are on the show that, like, you've seen, and then you'll be like, oh, hey, like, I enjoyed your set, like, just to make sure that you, like,
You're starting to build a relationship.
you're starting to build a relationship with even people that you like and people that you find comedy-wise are, like funny. And then it's, like, from there I find that, like, organically your network that you're making of, like, all these cool people people you see regularly and people that you're just keeping touch with maybe, like, electronically, they'll start being like, hey, this other cool thing is happening and stuff like that.
What's your favorite room that you work out of and why?
Like, my favorite stage that I've performed on, like, or, like, that I continuously
Could
perform.
be either or.
I would have to say my favorite overall stage that I've ever worked on, and this is just because of how it's built, is Liquid Laughs in Boise, Idaho. I went there for the 208 festival, and the nice thing about it is they have such low ceilings, which is great because then you can really hear the laughs. Because, like, if it's high up or outside, yeah, good luck. You won't be able to. You'll just see people smiling, and you'll be like, I don't know if I'm doing good or not. But yeah, I like the low ceilings, and also it's, like, really nice because they have all these curtains, so it forces people to sit up front, because that's also a thing. Like, if people aren't close to you, they feel very uncomfortable to laugh.
Yes.
Yeah. Then they're just, like, kind of staring at you. But yeah, I love that space. And then there's, like, a lot of great gems in LA too that, like, I love performing at.
As far as when you get ready to get on stage and you have a lot of anxiety, or especially if you're doing an important show, how do you calm yourself?
There's a few things I do. One thing I do is, as, like, I'm getting ready, if I have, like, a lot of anxiety and I'm very nervous about a thing, one, I will run, before I get there, I will have run the set, like, maybe, like, 10, 15 times about what I think I'm going to do. Because, like, when I get there, there might be something that happens, and I'll comment on that, because that's where, like, the magic happens. So it's like, to the best of my prep ability, I'll do what sets I think I will do. And I also feel like another thing, too, is a lot of times when you have, like, a high anxiety, high stress situation, it's usually because you've put a lot of pressure on the situation. I know I have. Like, I've made it where it's like, if I don't do well on this, then no one else is, I won't get any more big profile shows, or, like, I need to impress these people, blah, blah, blah. If this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen. And you can't create like that. Like, you can't create when you're so tense. So what I do is I change the narrative in my head, and I say, this isn't the only opportunity. This is just the first of many. And if it doesn't happen now, it's going to happen down the line. But there's more opportunities. This might be just the one I have currently on the books, but, like, believe that more are coming. And, like, I'm always a big believer that, and I have to say, anytime I've done a big show and I've done it, more opportunities that, either around that week or the next week will pop up that people will be like, hey, you want to do this? So I think it's a lot of, like, not being, like, so tight-fisted and being like, it has to work, this has to click. But, like, if you kind of just go, like, hey, I'm gonna just release this and see, just go, I'm gonna have fun. I also tell myself, like, remember, we're gonna have fun. This is why we do it. We're gonna have fun. And then I actually will, the last thing I do is I do something very goofy usually. So I'll do something very silly where I might, like, while I'm going to the venue, I might skip, like, 4 or 5 blocks down and, like, have people look at me and be like, why are you doing this, woman? Like, people that are not going to the show. Or I'll do, like, jumping jacks, or I'll do something silly.
Physical.
Like, maybe, or it could be something as, like, I'm walking down the street and I'm like, yes, like, hello, the different people on the street that have no idea, that aren't going to the show, that have no, because then I feel in a play mood, and it kind of brings me back to, like, oh, okay, it kind of becomes like a secret for me, like, I just did that thing, and just made me so giddy, and so that's honestly what helps the anxiety for me.
What do you like about the writing process?
What I like about writing for stand-up is I like trying to figure out what that turn is. And I hate this, but I love this at the same time, is, like, sometimes when you're writing for stand-up, you think something is so clever. You're like, this is gonna be amazing. This is a game changer. When they see this joke, And then I usually have written like another joke next to it that I'm like, oh, we're gonna find a bigger word for this, but this isn't not gonna be, but it'll do. And then I go to a mic, and the thing that I thought was gonna be brilliant, and then the thing that I was like, this is filler, everyone's like, that's amazing, and you're like, oh no. So yeah, that's what I like about it, is like I hate and I love it, is like I have no control over it. And I also, as far as like writing, when I'm writing like screenplays or like scripts, or like if I've been able to write a commercial or two, when I get to write those, what I like is I just think it's fun to like work in the constraints of what I've been told. Mm-hmm. And I also just find it funny when sometimes I get feedback and I'm just like, okay, I'll write that in. And so it's just fun to figure out, like, it kind of almost feels like Gordon Ramsay's kitchen, like especially when you're writing a commercial, because you have all these different elements, and then you're trying to figure out, like, oh, how do these all kind of work together, and how do they all fit? And it's a lot like, not Gordon Ramsay, sorry, there's this show that I like, Cutthroat Kitchen, and they give them, like, pasta, and then sometimes they're like, we're taking away your noodles and we're giving you Cheetos, and that's how it feels like for me. So it's very fun how do I cook in the kitchen with
Cheetos.
Yeah, with Cheetos. And, exactly.
That's funny. When people approach you about, hey, I want to get into stand-up, where should I go? Is there a website that they can go to?
Yeah, so the website that I would say, like, as far as where open mics are, there's a website called The Comedy Bureau, and it's by this guy named Jake Kroger. And he put it together, and it's amazing, and it shows where all the open mics are for the night are happening in LA. And he's done a good job. Like, if anyone sees this video, please donate money to him. He is a good person. He does it all by the goodness of his heart. Yeah, I recommend that. I also recommend, like, if someone's starting stand-up, to, like, there's a lot of great books to read. And I also recommend, like, I would say, like, taking a class. Like, at least for me, I know there's like a lot of pushback with people with classes, and people feel like, oh, you can't learn to be funny. That is true. You can't learn to be funny, but you can learn
craft.
You can learn craft, and you can learn how to tame like your comedic instinct so it can happen more rapidly. So I would say, like, yeah, go study with Beth Lapidus, or go study with David Arnold, because they're both great teachers, and they both have very different techniques to get it out of you. I'm so grateful that I studied with both of them. I think it's like not all stand-up classes are alike, and I think some stand-up classes, from what I've seen and heard, not that I've taken them, but like I think sometimes it's like they kind of make you cookie cutters, and they're like, hey, you got to do it this way and do it like that. And what I love about both Beth and David is like they're just like, be you, and we'll figure out what's funny about you, but let's just be you, and then we'll pull from there.
I want to know how you utilize your social media to help you as a comic.
I'm making a switch right now, because right now my social media is not a happy destination for anybody. It's a lot of promo. It's a lot of like, see me at this place. But what a lot of people don't realize as comics is like, the more you promote, actually, the more you're also putting your name out there. And then people go like, hey, let's get her for our show, or let's have her on our show, and stuff like that.
What are you planning on doing with your social media now? You said it wasn't a happy place.
Yes.
And you are going to make changes.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm rolling out like 3 different series. So Mondays I put out sketches. And then Wednesdays I'm going to put out like kind of more optimistic stuff. And then Fridays I'm going to I'm kind of scared to roll this out. I think it'll hopefully be out by the time this video is coming out. But what I'm planning to do is I'm planning to kind of earlier in the week ask people what kind of jokes they would want me to do, and then on Friday I'll debut a new joke.
Fantastic.
And it's gonna be kind of scary, but it'll be good. Oh, one last thing I did want to say for like people that are new comics or people that are wanting to try comedy is that like if you're like wondering like what kind of place you should start or go to, I would suggest to start your stand-up, especially if you're new or you're scared to do stand-up. Go someplace where it's not a bar or there's not alcohol, because those mics typically are a little bit more, I don't want to say that it's like rougher, but it is. It's scarier when you're first starting, because there's so many like bar patrons or people that aren't listening to you, so there's more push-pull. Like, I remember I had, the third mic I went to was at a bar.
Go to a juice bar.
Well, yeah, go to, like, a smoothie, go to a cafe, go to a bookstore. Like, go to some place where it's, like, you're not having to fight with already, like, unknown elements of, like, drunk people.
Yes.
But I do think, like, I'm not bashing those places because I do love going to those open mics and doing that. But if you're just starting out and you don't have the cojones yet, don't go there, because then people will be like, what's wrong with you? Like, you'll be doing, hey, dating in LA is so hard, and they'll be like, yeah, it is.
Those are the rooms you go to when you are ready to start learning how to do comedy combat, I call it.
Yeah, so it's also like you learn to, like, how can you make a loud bar pay attention to you? And you have to do it in a respectful way, because, like, if it's not respectful, then people are going to be like, hey, don't come back to my open mic.
Right.
So it's just stuff like that.
What would you like to be doing in 5 years?
5 years. Ooh. What would I like to be doing in 5 years? I'd still like to be doing stand-up. Hopefully in 5 years I'll be headlining and, like, writing and directing and, like, have a, production company and, like, acting and things. Like, but yeah, I still want to do stand-up for sure.
What would you like your legacy to be?
I guess, like, I would want my legacy to be when people see me, they go, that there's a smile on their face, and they go, like, oh, she's hilarious, or she was funny, or she was amazing. That it's like, I want to leave the world a better place through comedy and through, like, joy, like, just jokes, and that, when people think of me, they think of all these, like, either, like, they remember where they were, or, like, a childhood memory, or, like, kind of like how I feel about, like, when I see people like Gilda Radner, or Goldie Hawn, or, like, Steve Martin. Like, it's like, oh, this is, like, a part of my childhood. Like, this is something that, like, I won't forget.
You started as a regular at the Comedy Store. A lot of times we couldn't get up in the rooms.
Nope.
So we would have to go down to East LA, do Steven's Steakhouse and bars and lounges and whatever to get some time, because as women, and not even Latina, just as women, if they put one up, you would not get up.
That's right.
It was only one, and if one, it was one. So you had to go out.
You had to do that, and usually the one that was there was a girlfriend or a wife, which is now an ex-wife. But that's kind of how it rolled back then. It still kind of rolls that way now, but I say stuff about it. I have no fear about anything comically any longer, within means of reason.
So we banded together.
We did.
And we decided we were going to take matters in our own hands.
That's right.
And get ourselves on stage.
We did.
And we started
And we did.
Funny Ladies of Color.
We did start Funny Ladies of Color. I love that.
And we started it in the Valley.
We did.
Every Tuesday night. And then outgrew the Valley and decided it was time to be in Hollywood. And you got us into the Comedy Store.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, you got us into the Comedy Store. We were able to do it every Tuesday night in the Belly Room. And we created opportunities to bring in diverse audiences.
We were the first at the Comedy Store.
Anywhere. We
Anywhere.
were the first
We were it.
group of independent female comedians of color doing a show together.
When we're talking about it, you know how you just kind of barrel through life? I don't really think about doing those things. I just do it. We really took some big chances then. And there were so many women that walked forth and came forth and wanted
Came
to
out
be
of
part-
that group.
Lotus Weinstock called me and said, I would love to be part of this. And I went, Lenny Bruce's his last girlfriend before he passed wants to do this with us, and she said, I want to do it with you guys. So she saw way ahead of the game. She was very smart and very kind.
She
I loved
was
her.
amazing,
She's
yes.
a very sweet lady.
Yes.
I love those scarves, you know.
She elevated us.
She sure did. She sure
Yes,
did.
she did. We started getting a lot of buzz at the store because of what we were doing.
We got big buzz
Yes.
in town, not just at the
Yes.
store. And when we went to go take that show to HBO, it was Funny Ladies of Color Take On. They wanted us, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And then they didn't want us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to somebody else, the name Tracy Ullman Takes On.
Oh,
We should have taken that to the bank.
I didn't remember that.
Oh,
But
yes.
what I do remember was we had the room, but we also had to fill the room. That was part of the deal. We had
Yes.
to get the audience in there. And we were very out of the box thinkers of what kind of audiences we were going to get. One of my favorite audiences that we got repeatedly was the deaf community.
Oh, I love.
Do you remember that?
Of course I do.
We had our signers. And
yes, we did. It was sort of a delay situation because I've done a couple of deaf audiences since then, and it's really an amazing thing for a comic. I think every new comic should do it because what happens is you have to wait on your timing.
Yes.
So when you do that, you can't wait for that punchline or that laughter to throw you into the next joke.
Yes.
You have to hold it back and
Yes.
wait, and you feel you feel weird, but it's a great exercise.
And my other excellent audience was the firefighter.
Oh, I keep thinking about the hoses and everything else.
Oh my God, we had the best audiences for the show. Best audiences.
And I'm going to remind you, Danny Glover and the Hot Wings.
Oh my God, yeah. Danny Glover came to support us and ate all of our hot wings.
Yeah, they were good hot wings. I
They
have to
were
say.
excellent.
Excellent hot wings.
I think we used to go there just for
Just
the
for
hot wings.
wings.
That was the saddest moment of us leaving the place
Yes.
because we no longer had access
wings.
to those hot wings.
Yes, they were great hot wings.
Yeah,
Great hot
That was
wings.
before hot wings was popular. We were ahead of our time in doing stand up and doing the shows and in giving people opportunities.
We were very
And
ahead of our time.
I don't know if you remember how we would go find people. We would go sneak into rooms, sit there in the corner and watch people and write down their names and then pull them aside and say, can you work with us? Would you work with us?
We did, that's right. Yeah, but most people ran toward us.
Yeah.
I mean, even the gals that still talk about that. They still talk about that show that we had. It was the show. It's
And we
amazing.
were smart in that we used men to MC our show.
We would once in a while put a skirt on them to make sure.
Well,
that they-
sometimes, yes, we did. We did that to Willie Gote.
And also, I remember Felipe Esparza putting a skirt on.
Oh,
He doesn't
that's
remember.
hilarious.
Yeah,
I don't
but he
remember,
went with it.
But I remember
Charlie Hill.
I love Charlie
God,
Hill.
love him.
And Freddie Soto used to
Freddie Soto used to come in.
MC
Yes.
for us.
That's right. Freddie Soto did.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Freddie
we had
Soto.
we had a really excellent run, and we brought in a lot of people.
I think it was about a 2-year run, wasn't it?
3 years.
Was it 3
We
years?
did it.
Wow.
We did a year at LA Cabaret, and then we did 2 years
At the store.
At the store,
Yeah.
and we got to do some political
We
events that they didn't really like us.
Well, you know what?
They
Because
did.
we were ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Nobody did. They did not know how to react to us. Like right now, it's a perfect time for us to be.
Well, now
where
it's
we're at.
normal.
Now it's normal.
Yeah, now it's like, oh,
It's
yeah.
so normal.
Yeah, back
well,
then
I
it
mean,
wasn't.
but if we had like a gathering of the gals, the stories that would come out of that would be phenomenal because of the reason that we were so unusual, and that we were forerunners. And we're talking about, different women, different colors. I mean, even remember Lori, who was Armenian. Look at the Armenian
Yes.
community now. Very positive for the community, very positive socially. I think it was an unusual move for us. And we got slack for it, too, as well. We did get slack for it.
What I loved was we had another partner, it was 3 of us, Sharona Faye, who was fearless in calling anybody. She
Amazing.
got us a lot of press.
And you
we
brought her
did-
in.
I brought her in. She was my ex-agent. So she really did a lot to help move that ball.
She read Variety every day.
Yes.
She read The Hollywood Reporter. So she had an insider's view of what to do with that. She just knew how to do that, which
Yes.
is really unusual in LA. It was a form of marketing that you have to have with a actor or a stand-up. You have to be able to have marketing skills. We were forced to do that because of being in the business when we did. We had to sell what we knew we had, and that really formulated our thought to change the dynamics of things.
Well, I
careers.
learned the marketing stuff from when I worked in radio and records because I had to do that. So I just applied it to acting. It was like, it's the same thing. It's not different. And I do think that every artist, especially today with social media,
Absolutely.
you gotta be on it. You
Got to be having a
cannot-
handle. You have
You
to have a
cannot
handle.
not have a social media presence.
You cannot. You have to have an understanding of what you're selling to put out there.
Yes.
Because I do see people that are social media selling, and then you go to watch them. I mean, they
They
have
have
these
nothing.
and you
Yes.
kind of look there and you go, You know, so it's one of those things that you just
Yeah, you have to know what you sell.
You have to know
I
what you
think
and you
that's
have to be on top of
right.
it.
You really have done a lot for Latino comedy in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Just
Thank you.
straight out, I mean, you've been consistent. You have nurtured a lot of young Latino comedians coming up, and you've never asked for anything.
I thought when I started there was only a couple of other Latino comics, and then I went with Gilbert Esquivel. Took me to the Comedy Store, and there was like 900 other Latino comics. You know? And I was like, and then there was female Latino comics too. So this was something because I had worked in an area just where there was just a couple of guys. I thought it was just me, Paul Rodriguez, George, and then I met Gilbert. I go, okay, now there's 4 of us.
What made you want to start doing comedy?
I was always funny as a kid, and I was a class clown as usual. You know, most comics are. And I was working at the gas company, and I was working in the field, and so I hurt my back. And a friend of mine who was a musician, they had a band called Tierra.
Yes, very
And,
big band.
Yeah, they had a big hit, and so he tells me, because he was from the same area, he says, "Dude, you should be a comedian." And then I said, "I'm 33 years old, man. You know, I got a job, I got a family, I got kids." He says, "No, you should really open for the band." Oh, okay, so I went up there, did everybody else's material, and then it just bit me. And then just started, one thing after another started happening. I was opening for this band, I was opening for this comic, and then, you know, TV started coming around. So now I just left that job. Well, I didn't even tell him, I just left, you know, and then just started doing this for a living, and it's been great. It's been almost 30 years now. It's 28 years.
As you were starting to do stand-up, what made you decide that you wanted to create a niche for yourself? Because that's what you did in emceeing.
Well, what I wanted to do, and as you know, there wasn't a lot of room for Latino comics
Right.
when we started. There was George and Paul, and we had to start doing shows in bars or in fundraisers or some sort. That's what we had to work out, learn our craft. So when we started, we convinced the clubs that, you know, there's a market. And when they saw the numbers coming in, then they realized, oh, there is a market. But to do that, somebody had to host it, somebody had to produce the show, somebody had to book the comics. And so that's what I did. And I did it a couple of times. And after that, it just continued to go. And now I've been at the ISOs 20 years doing that. And in the midst of that, there have been comics that have come and gone. There have been comics that have gone to great success. You know, there was a 19-year-old kid that came and was doing cartoon voices. You know, little chubby kid, and now he's traveling worldwide. And
Got a series.
Millionaire. He's got a series
That's
now.
right.
So,
Gabriel Iglesias.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, so there's been a number of comics that have gone on to big success. And you know, I'm not saying I'm because of me, but
No, but you gave a platform for us to be able to work and have time, not a
Absolutely.
couple of minutes, but to be able to work out the material,
Right.
bring it back, and not get penalized.
Right, absolutely.
All these bars and restaurants and clubs that you really got up in there and got spots for our community to
Right.
not only hone our craft, but to have Latino audiences come and feel part of it.
Yeah, because they could relate to the comedy now. You know, it was good in a sense because, like I said, there was a market. I mean, business-wise, if you're a club owner and you're in the middle of the San Gabriel Valley, where you're surrounded by Latinos and you don't have any Latinos on your show, something's wrong. So when they realized that, and they, you know us, we show up. We show up with everybody. It's like a wedding. You invite you and 10 other people to go with you. So yeah, it was cool. It was great. And then celebrities started popping in because we had so many people. So celebrity
Because
comics
the rooms were always hot
Yeah.
and are always hot, yes.
and they would be popping in, and you know, people you never thought would. Roseanne popped in, Louis Anderson. I mean, I'm not dropping names, but I'm saying people of that caliber were showing up. And what are you doing here on a Tuesday? I said, well, we heard this room is hot, man. So I said, yeah, it is, you know. so we would do that, man, and it's been great.
The casinos.
The casinos too.
Yes, that was a wonderful room, by
Yeah,
the
that was
way.
great.
Actually, in that room was the first time that I saw George Lopez hold the audience hostage for an hour
Yeah.
and just wipe them out. I mean, when he was done, everybody needed to
Everybody
go
went
home.
home. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was
including the comics.
it was over. Yeah, it was like I can't follow that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was he just like bam, 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 like a machine, like a comedy
Mm-hmm.
machine gun. That's the beauty of what you've brought, is that you have brought all these people into the rooms that they come in and they feel loved and they get to
Yeah.
do their stuff. So
That's the idea.
thank you, Rudy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rudy.
You're welcome.
So what is it about emceeing that you love?
Well, emceeing, I don't have to stick to a set. I can work on the crowd. I can talk about topical stuff. If I'm bombing, I can bring up the next comic, you know. So it's just a fun thing to do. It's just because you get to do different stuff every week, because if you have the same people coming back, you don't want to be doing the same stuff. So
Now, did you have a comedy mentor walking you through emceeing?
no, Gilbert and I were doing these rooms in the neighborhoods because we couldn't get into the clubs. So we started doing these rooms, you know, Black Angus or some, you know. We always joke about doing comedy at a Boyle Local soon. That's all. We honed our skills. So Gilbert and I would say, well, what do you think? You should do this. I'll do it like this and do it like that. That's how we developed a hosting thing. We would run into different guys like Fraser Smith that had been doing it like at the Laugh Factory and stuff like that, and then compare notes. But other than that, you know, we're just goofy guys.
What comics have inspired you or taught you something?
Oh, well, I'm old school, man. I grew up with Richard Pryor, George Carlin. You know, there's now being in this business so many years, I've listened to so many different guys that are pretty clever. Louis Anderson he wasn't somebody that I was aware of because of his style, but guys like that. And as far as learning locally, I toured with George for a while, and George taught me a lot about being on time, dressing correctly, doing your time, don't go over it, respecting the light, respecting your other comics.
Can you say that again?
Respecting the other comics, respecting the light. There's a thing in a club, if you have 90 minutes for a show and you're supposed to do 20 and the next guy has so much and you do 40, and you're going to cut this guy's time down, and then maybe even the last guy won't even get up. Those little things that you got to learn in the business. So George taught me a lot. Gilbert Esquivel was the one that was very inspiring, and guys like Larry Omaha. Remember Larry?
Oh, I love Larry.
Yeah, those guys took the time to say, no, look, man, you can't do that. You know, it's like this. Why not? Because, and then they explain it to you. So.
Who is Gilbert Esquivel?
Gilbert Esquivel is probably one of the nicest guys in the business. I met Gilbert at a church gig. They had hired him, somebody hired me, and everybody there had cowboy hats and the big belts and the boots, and we thought, man, nobody speaks English here. I said, you know yours in Spanish? He goes, no, man, you gonna do yours in Spanish? I go, well, you know, whatever works, right? So we flipped the coin. He said, you lost, you're up first, dog. So he went up there and he tried his best Spanish, and they weren't having it. They were nothing. So he says, it's all yours, man. So I went up there, and the first thing I said, does anybody speak English? They all raised their hand. Yeah, we speak English. Oh, okay. So then, you know, so we became the best of friends. We recorded a DVD together.
And we could get the DVD where? On Amazon?
I don't know if you can find it anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's been a few years. So
Okay.
we could probably find it on Amazon. And he's just a very spirited guy. He's a religious man. He's just funny. He's just funny, and he's a good man, a good family man. Takes care of his kids.
Clean. Always worked clean.
Always clean.
Always worked clean.
And,
one of the few.
Yeah, and just kills it every time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Gil's a bad dude. You know.
Yeah.
So we've become really good friends because we've had so many things in common. You know, family, areas where we lived, history, and you get to bond with somebody like that. So I've had the pleasure of knowing him for many years. So.
How did you get into the Ice House? Because you've had a wonderful partnership with them.
Right.
You have been consistent in bringing in an audience for
Correct.
20 years.
Right. Well, like I said, when we started doing stuff, there wasn't a venue for Latino comedy. A lot of Latino comics, they're coming from all over, man. New York, Luke Torres was coming from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. A lot of people from the Southwest, East Coast were coming. When I went and spoke with Sean Sullivan, who was the GM over at the Ice House, we were having lunch, and I go, hey, man, we need a Latino night. And I hated to do it like that because it just seemed like it was just pigeonholed for Latinos. He goes, well, we'll try it. He says, well, I'll give you 30 days, man. I said, well, dude, you don't understand. We are surrounded here. This is like the Alamo, dude. I said, you're surrounded by Latinos in the San Gabriel Valley. You need to give them an outlet, a venue to come to. So he says, okay, let's try it. So we tried it, and 30 days turned into 20 years. So in those 20 years, we have proven to the fact that there's a market for Latinos. And not only Latinos, we changed the name from Latino Night to the Wednesday Night Live. Because now I'm not just booking Latin comics, I'm booking everybody. of every color, every creed, every race, you know.
And you're wonderful that way.
Well, thank you.
I mean, even with Latino Night, you were wonderful. You would bring Sherry Shepherd into the room. I mean,
Yeah.
you brought in a lot of non-Latinos into
Right,
the room.
absolutely. Because I mean, funny's funny, man. You know, funny is funny, and it doesn't matter. I have a picture in my office of comics standing outside the Ice House. There's an African American, there's an American Indian, there's a Mexican, there's a gay man, there's a black man, there's a white comic, and nobody looks at the picture and says, "Hey, there's a black man, there's a white guy." And nobody says it. They just say, "There's a bunch of comics," and that's the beauty of comedy, because none of that matters. So when they said, "Well, we got to keep it Latino night," I said, "Well, no. First of all, people are going to think it's in Spanish, you know, and none of us speak Spanish well. And secondly, you're just giving us just a small radius of people. So let's open that up." And so we did, and it's been successful. You know, you don't do 20 years without it being good. You know, they wanted to say, well, maybe we shouldn't let it run that long. And then we were trying to stop it at 16, and people were like, "No, man, you got to keep doing it." And we had people like George come in, and Russell Peters and Arsenio showed up. He said, "We want to keep this going." So I thought, where'd you guys come from? You know, so it was a good support.
Yes.
So,
What are some of the good things that you've gotten out of stand-up that kind of anchors you?
well, you know, I've been fortunate enough to use stand-up as a vehicle to either provide funds for a charity or do some good with it. Not just, "Hey, come see me and let me tell jokes and you pay me money." I've been able to take this and go, "Look, Lydia, we're doing this thing for this charity over here," or "This person needs some money, or let's do a fundraiser. Let's put on a show and get this money and give it to these people because they can't pay their rent, or they're going to lose their house, or hospital bills."
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, medical.
Hospital. A lot of comics, the bad thing about comedy, like you started off, there is no 401k, there is
Right.
no health benefits. You're self-employed, you got to figure it out. And so many comics that we've had in the circle have died from
Yeah.
cancer and needed financial help.
Right, and you know, it also comes back to me because a few years ago my wife was very sick with the rheumatoid arthritis, and the medical bills were crazy. You know, I talked to a few guys, and some of the guys took it upon themselves to raise some money to do a GoFundMe thing. And you know, Latinos, we want to work for our money, not necessarily, "Hey man, give me money." We never heard of GoFundMe or anything. Paul Rodriguez says, "We're comics. If one falls, we all come running," and they did. It was a beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
You know?
Awesome. But that's the power of community, right?
Yeah. They all showed up and taking turns and, "I'll host for you. Don't worry, man. Stay home," and stuff. And it was great. You know. So that's one of the more beautiful things that have happened out of comedy. And we do a toy drive. My wife and I and my kids now and my grandkids now put everybody to work. We started when I started in '91. And we started doing these comedy shows and raising toys to underprivileged kids in the neighborhood. Well, this thing's just blown up, man. I mean, we're going on 28 years this year,
Wow.
and now we get involved with Pat Prescott and the Wave and Talaya Trigueros, and they've come through, and then we've got now people sponsoring the show. So now we're not only sending toys, we're sending money to these charities or Children's Hospital and shelters and stuff like that. So now it's become a big
And
business.
do you have a 501(c)(3)?
Yes.
We'll put the link below or the information below so you can donate if you feel the need. What is one of your most favorite memories of doing stand-up?
I think when I did the Coliseum, they told me it was a car show, and they told me some guy named Ice Cube was going to be there. I had no idea who he was, and I do this in my act. Ice Cube brought 50,000 people to the Coliseum, and I had just done like maybe, I don't know, Black Angus and did comedy in front of 30 people, and I get there and I said, "Well, where's the car show?" "No, this is it, man. You're next." "Next what?" He says, "You're next. You go up, and then we're going to bring out Ice Cube." So I go backstage. And I forget his name's Ice Cube, and I call him Ice Cream. I call him Ice Cream, and he gets mad at me. And he's, "Who are you, man?" So I go out there, and there's the Coliseum, man. It's huge. So I went out there, and I figured if I make half of them laugh, fine. So I had a decent set and stuff. And so he came up and said, "You done good, dog." And, "Okay." And that was probably one of the highlights, And then meeting Carlos Santana, that was the other one. And I wasn't working or nothing like that. I just happened to be backstage with a friend of mine, and Carlos was there. And that to me, he's bigger than life to me, man. So I never been starstruck, but I stuttered like crazy, man. I was like, you know, so. But that was one of the cool.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, what about Cheech Marin?
Oh, Cheech Marin. We do you remember the Latino Laugh Festival? It was
Absolutely.
in San Antonio.
Yes.
They had every celebrity, every Latino celebrity, almost, and everybody else was there. So Cheech was one of the hosts, and Daisy Fuentes.
One of the original MTV
Yeah.
VJs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cheech Marin was there, and he was the host, and he came up to us, the comics that were there, and just said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" Blah blah blah. We were stunned. You know, this is Cheech Marin, man. He's, 20 years past. I do a gig for an art show that he's doing.
He's a wonderful artist.
Right, and he's
Wonderful.
supporting Latino artists, and he opened up this museum in Riverside. So he said, "We want you to host this thing for Cheech Marin." And I was like, "Oh my God," So I walk up to him, and why would he remember me? Right, so I go, "Cheech, I worked with you at the Latino Laugh Fest." He goes, "Yeah, Moreno, right? Rudy Moreno." So somebody fed him some notes. I don't even remember my name. Just the nicest guy in the world, and a class act.
He's giving back.
Yeah, he's giving back to Latino artists. And that's one of the things I remember you used to always tell us, you got to support the home team, support your Latino. It's not going to happen unless we make it happen.
That's right.
So if you have a chance to go and support a play, a comedy show, a group, a TV show, whatever it is, do it. And
Yes.
I've always taken that advice to heart, thanks to you, and I've done it.
That's the beauty of who you are, is that you have always been a support to people. When we were doing the Hot and Spicy Mamitas, you were the first to give us a stage to do our show. First of all, 5 Latina women, nobody wanted us.
No, it was a great
Nobody
show.
wanted us.
It was a
but
great
the
show.
truth was, nobody wanted us. And so to play rooms that you were doing, you were hosting and you were producing in, helped us. We would figure out who the MC was going to be for that night. And if they took too long on stage, the audience turned on them.
Right,
because
right,
we
right.
don't want to see you, we want the mamitas.
Right, I remember
So you were one of the first people, if not the first, to give us that opportunity. Right. And I just think, as Latinos in the business, it is our responsibility to help everybody.
Absolutely.
Well, not everybody, let me take that. I ain't helping everybody. But to help people who really have the talent, have the drive, and are good. That you want to champion young people. You want to champion people who they just need the door to be open.
Right. That's what I tell young comics. You have to be passionate about this. It's not a thing to go show off to your friends.
And responsible.
Absolutely.
You have to be responsible. If someone gives you the opportunity, you have to not make them out to be, bad. I shouldn't have done this, because don't give them regrets. Why did I help this person?
Right.
They just burned me.
And I always tell young comics, John Wooden was a coach at UCLA. He said something that's always stuck with me. He says, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And I tell my students this because, like any job, you have to prepare yourself, man. You have to have your stuff ready so when opportunity knocks and you're there, you're ready to go. It's not like, oh, well, can I have 2 more days before I go up? No, I want you here now. It was funny, one time George Lopez had a show called Lopez Tonight, talk show. Not a lot of guys were on that show, the comics. There's more celebrities and stuff. But he called one day, his people called and said, George wants you here tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Well, tomorrow for what? You want me to sweep? What do you So says, no, he wants you to come and do a 5-minute set. So I had been doing it enough years to know I have 5 minutes. So when I got there, I did the 5 minutes. But it was just one of those examples of be ready.
Right.
Be ready. If you're an actor, take acting lessons. It's okay you've been on a TV show already and you've done that. Just keep your chops,
What would you like to do in the next 5 years?
Rob a bank. No,
He's kidding. He's kidding people.
Comedy. I think I would like to produce shows. I'm getting to the age now and the time where, some of these things, like I don't go on the road anymore because it's just tiring for me.
What do you want to produce?
Comedy shows or big shows, music and comedy.
Okay.
And maybe at some point even consider doing, selling it to television or something.
I am so ecstatic to bring to you an extraordinary actress, singer, comedian, and just a wonderful spiritual person. Please help me welcome Suly Diaz. What was the catalyst for you to start doing stand-up?
Well, I was bored between auditions and jobs. And then I joined a class with Judy Carter because I thought I can be out on stage on my own. I can do that. So let me learn how to do that. And that's what I did. I did my first 5 minutes. I killed. And so a bug got into me. And you know what? Stand-up gave me so much confidence that then I started going to the auditions and I was booking more work.
You approached me about doing Hot and Spicy Mamitas. You said, I want to do an all Latin female show. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I had just finished co-producing Funny Ladies of Color, and I really wasn't interested in getting back into groups, but you were so adamant about, yeah, we have to do this. This is great. And so that was the birth of Hot and Spicy Mamitas. You know, your persistence of saying, no, we can do this. This will be great. And once we did it, once we actually got all the women, started booking spots at the different comedy venues, something started to happen. You want to talk about that?
Well, at first I had spoken to Ludo Vika, one of the girls, about doing it, but she wasn't a producer, and neither was I. So you know, we didn't have that know-how how to produce. So it was like, And so I went to you. I said, Lydia, I spoke to Ludo, and I would like to do this. But I was the one that really wanted to do it because Ludo was working quite professional. You know, she was doing professional venues at the time, so she didn't need us. But
right, she was doing Vegas. She was doing. She was going all over the country.
So I went to you and I said, let's do it. You know, ignorance is bliss, because I had nothing else to do but to be a mother to my son, and I had time to do that. And so I engaged with you in such a way, and then boom, something happened that we were not ready for. All of a sudden we found out that we had there was a niche, there's a space for women like us. We had something to say and people wanted to hear it.
Well, I think what was so special about the group, first of all, the chemistry with you, me, Ludo, Dyana, Marilyn, and in the beginning we had Debbie Gutierrez, and then she left to go have her incredible career, and then Dyana Ortelli came in, which became the perfect blend, because you had a Puerto Rican, you had a New Yorican, you had a Dominican, you had a Mexican from Mexico, you had a Mexican from New Mexico, and the combination of all these women and these personalities just worked. It just worked. Even though we weren't doing our stand-ups together, just the energy of the group worked. The show was something that no one had ever seen before. You hadn't seen these fiery Latinas from different avenues of life come together and just bring their stuff. Every time we performed somewhere, we packed it out. And what impressed me the most, and then I'll throw it back to you, was that we always had men MCs. And whenever they seemed to go a little bit too long, the audience would kind of boo them off. Like, okay, that's enough. Bring the women.
Which is so ironic, because for women, doing stand-up comedy is a little harder than for men. I mean, socially, they're permitted to say whatever they want. We are too, but not so much. It's harder for us. We all know that. So that was incredible. But we were so feisty, you know, we were so happy. We were really so happy, and I'm sure that came across.
And the audience was excited. You know, it wasn't like a regular comedy show. I mean, they were there for us. They weren't there just to see comedy. They came to support the mamitas. You know, it was always wonderful to see how the club owners reacted to see the audience engaging with us. We did the improv, and the guys from the kitchen ran out when you were on stage and lost their minds. It was like, Suly Diaz, Suly Diaz, it's Suly Diaz. Because they knew you from Corralitos.
Yeah, from the novela. Yeah. It was wonderful. And we even had a billboard on Sunset Boulevard. I mean, who would have known, huh, Lydia? When we started this, who would have known? It was we have our CD and everything.
We had merch. We had a lot of merchandise. Remember, we had the T-shirts that Shelley Wood got us, where it was a drawing of us, a sketch of us that somebody, I believe from Homeboy Industries, drew of us. And then we had the candles, the candles that we put the little prayers on with our picture, and we sold that for a while.
It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. And I found a place in Hollywood. Well, I had found it first when I stepped into the Laugh Factory Latino night. I said, oh my God, I belong. And then from that moment on, I felt there was some place in Los Angeles where I belonged. And I felt accepted. And then when I started meeting all the comics, from different places, some from Mexico, some from Nicaragua. I met everyone. It was Carlos Mencia, Willie Barcena, Rudy Moreno, my fabulous, wonderful, adored Frankie C, which helped me develop my comedy later on. And I met you at the Comedy Store.
Yes.
At the moment, something had happened that I didn't have a job. It was not a right moment. And then you wrote a check for $250 and you gave it to me. And I'm like, what? What are you doing? I'm like, take it. I took it. And then I gave it back to you. I don't know when you needed it, but that was such a beautiful gesture.
You were a single mom. And so I had a heart for you because I was a single mom. And I knew how difficult it was to be doing your work and taking care of your kid. And, that's a horrible feeling as a single mom that, you're struggling. We were the single moms. Even though Dyana had a child, he was already grown. He was already, teenager at that point. We had little ones.
Yeah, when I got there, my son was 1.5 years old. That's what he was. And then we hit that earthquake, that horrible earthquake at 92, was it?
91.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But you know what? You stuck it out, and that's what it is. It's about following through. It's about commitment, and that's what you have in spades. You are committed. You are dedicated. You show up. You persevere. And that, I think that was the wonderful thing about Hot and Spicy Mamitas, is that we didn't care. In the beginning, the guys were like making fun. It was like, oh yeah, right. Oh yeah, that's cute. But when they saw the audiences that we were bringing, there was a shift for us.
Yeah, they said, well, they're onto something, all right.
Yeah. And then at that point, we started getting the respect. Because what we were doing was not, now you got all these groups, you got all these shows with women, but the magnitude of what we did back then, when, if one woman was on a bill, that was a lot. And Latino nights, if you had 3 women, oh my God, that was unspeakable. It's like, there's 3 Latina women? What? That usually was never the case. And so here we come, and we're like 5 of us, and we're taking over, and we took over. And what was great was we got to take over all the clubs. The Comedy Store was great that they let us do the main room. We got to do the main room at the Improv, and we got to do the Laugh Factory regularly, and we got to do our CD at the Ice House. We were kicking ass.
Oh, the press. Yeah, we got press. And the one thing that we never did that is it turns off people. Something we never talked about, our hormones. That hormonal thing that women like to talk about and nobody wants to listen to. We never talked about that. And I think that that was very important because that was a topic that people don't like.
We came in with balls. We weren't coming in with hormones. We came in with big giant balls. Now that you say that, it never occurred. It would never have occurred to me to even talk about that on stage. I wanted to be with the boys. I wanted to have. I wanted to hold my own. It was hard enough being a girl. I didn't want to billboard that.
It's that it didn't even occur to us because we were not into that, talking about that, and we weren't. And I think that's why men liked watching us too, because we never talked about that specific thing that nobody likes.
And
which is real because we're a walking hormone, but
we were really about empowerment. Our show was really about empowerment. It was like we came in there and you were so deceptive because you came in so sexy and so provocative, and then you would like slam people in the most lovely way. It was just wonderful. And then Marilyn would come in with her filthy mouth and just start talking, start talking about faux sex. It was delicious. And then you had Ludo Vika doing Vegas, and you had Dyana Ortelli talking about cholos. And
we did that in LA. But then when I came to Puerto Rico again to live, I said, I'm going to do this with some gals in Puerto Rico, and we're going to hit it big. It was called Suly's Comedy Divas, and I was the host. And I invited you, Lydia.
Yes.
And we worked on your act, and we translated it to Spanish. We worked and worked on it. You worked on it so hard. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. When this woman got on stage, she killed in the most ferocious way because your material in Spanish with your accent and your reality and your demeanor just became like 10 times stronger, and people were delighted with you, delighted.
But that had to do with, first of all, your coaching, your helping me, because if you remember, I had gone there before with Ludo, and we had done the sex show in Puerto Rico with some other comics. It was Mike Robles.
We invited Bertilla Damas. We invited Bertilla because one of the girls couldn't make it.
After we did it in Miami, that's right, Bertilla did do it with us. Then when we went to, then after we did it in Miami, he wanted us to come to Puerto Rico. And only me and Ludo, for whatever reason, it was just me and Ludo, so they brought 2 guys. The audience hated me. I mean, you talk about an audience just turning on you. They were not having me at all. So that when I went back to do it with you, I was on a mission. I was like, you know what? I am going to give the best I can. So I remember being at your house for almost a week and a half, just working. I had worked on the material before, but we worked on it and worked on it.
Writing and rewriting. Yeah.
And it was, but it also had to do because you gave me some of the inside of the island people.
Yes, and let me tell you something about stand-up comedy in Spanish and in English. First of all, it's a genre that it came from the Jewish people from the Catskills, right? And then North America adopted it, and we're not used to seeing women talking about such personal things, okay? In Latin America, that is just like a no. I mean, from the time you're growing up, if you're a boy, they're telling you, have a whole bunch of girlfriends. But if you're a girl, they're telling you, don't give your, take care of your
protect your goods. Yeah, protect those goods.
2 different things. Now then, doing it on stage, live, for people is quite different from doing it on camera. Remember, the audience you had was, like what? The ladies that don't work, that are always watching novelas, you know, they were never going to understand what you were doing. They must have said, what's wrong with her, you know, because they're not, it's not part of our culture to speak that way.
What were one of your favorite moments with Hot and Spicy Mamitas? Do you have a couple of favorite moments that you remember that stand out for you?
I had so many fabulous moments, Lydia, really.
How about 4th and B in San Diego, where we went down with Frankie C, and we had over 1,000 people?
That was amazing. That was amazing. I know. And nobody knew us, but there we were.
What would you say to young women out there who are single moms, who are trying to have a career and take care of their children at the same time?
Well, I will have to quote Oprah Winfrey, because this quote from Oprah has been like a major rule in my life. One thing at a time. Take care of this. You took care of that. Now you take care of this. You took care of that. Now you take care of this. One thing at a time. Don't go crazy. And yes, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And it's hard work, but we've all done it. So many women have done it. So many women have done it with 4 children. I don't even know how they do that. To take one situation at a time.
How do you think being a mom has affected your life as you look at stuff? You know, it's like from being a single woman to then being married to then being a single mom, and remaining an artist, and now you have different lenses, so that having been a mother, you bring that to the table in everything you do.
Well, when you're a mother, you know, the thing you love the most in your life is your son or your daughter, your children. That's what you love the most. It's like you're not selfish that way. You're less selfish. And they make you go through so many emotions, raising them, that definitely you can use all those emotions for your acting, because they never stop. And, you know, they surprise you. So you're more profound when you're a mother.